We're going to look at now how to recognize the present tense just by looking at the Greek. Not even using Esau, just looking at the Greek, recognizing the present tense and seeing who it applies to. Okay, here's a verb that's really easy to understand the present tense with. The verb is luo. Okay, everyone say that? Luo. Right, and it means to loose something. Like if you untie something, you got a horse that's tied up and you loose it. It can also mean to break something. It's used in breaking the commandments. Now, is anyone familiar with this kind of chart? We call it a paradigm, a verb paradigm. Okay, this is the normal way if you're learning a language. They're set out the verbs. It's easier to understand it if you look at the right column first. Okay, that first row, remember rows are ones that go horizontally. The first row says, I am loosing. Second row says, you are loosing. The next one says, he, she, it is loosing. Then it says, we are loosing. And it says, you are loosing. Now, can anyone guess what the difference is between this you are loosing and the other one?
One's plural, one's singular.
That's right. And this one, the second one is singular. So you start off with this one, the second one is plural. So you start off with the singular, then you move to the plural. The last one is they are loosing. Now, can anyone tell me where it switches from singular to plural? That's right. That's right. So you got I am loosing, you are loosing, he, she, it is loosing. That is all singular. It's talking about one person. Me, that's one person. You, as in one person. He, she, or it, it's just one person. Then the next three, it's gone into the plural. It's now we are loosing, you are loosing, they are loosing. Now, when you learn languages, the way that this is referred to is first person singular. I just wrote one SG there. One means first person. First person means you're referring to yourself. Okay, so the first person singular is I am loosing. Now, when you see second person singular, that's referring to you. So you'd be looking at someone and saying, you are loosing. That's second person singular. Third person singular is saying he is loosing. So it's pointing to someone saying he is loosing. Okay, then we go into the plural. Now notice we're back at first person, but it's plural. So first person singular is what? I am loosing. Now if you're going to pluralize yourself, I don't think you can really say that, but if you were going to, there was more of you, how would you say that in English? Yeah, we are loosing. So first person plural is we are loosing. Okay, now second person plural is really easy. Because remember, second person singular is you, as in you, just you, one person. If it's plural, it's you all. You know, if we was in the States, we'd say y'all. You know, it's actually very good that they say y'all, because they differentiate. In English, we don't know. We read a Bible passage. We're like, who's Jesus chatting to? Is he chatting to one disciple? Or is he chatting to everyone in the field? You know, so it's too bad that in English we don't say y'all. You know, that would be helpful. Right, then we've got third person plural. Remember, when it's singular, it's saying he, pointing to one person over there. But if there's a bunch of them, if it's plural, it's they. They are loosing. Okay, so the way this works in the Greek is first person singular is luo. Everyone say that? Luo. Second person singular is lues. Third person singular is lue. Okay. First person plural is luomen. Second person plural is luete. And third person plural is luusi. There you go. Yeah. Right, so if you're going to say the whole thing, you would say, and this is what you normally memorize when you're learning Greek, you memorize saying luo, lues, lue, luomen, luete, luusi. Let's just all try saying that together now. Luo, lues, lue, luomen, luete, luusi. Okay. Now, when you memorize that, you'll find that when you see a Greek verb that just says luomen, straight away you will know it means what? Yeah, we are loosing. Okay. Okay, great. So this is how the present tense works. Now, check it out. I want you guys to translate this. Okay, so at the top there, you've got a bit of the Bible in Greek. At the bottom, I've given you some vocab. Okay, and let me just correct something. Well, no, it's okay. I've given you there lue, to loose, but I haven't told you what person it is. So you guys take a minute now, try and translate that. So if you might find it helpful to write down your translation as you go. Now, when you've got it, ask yourself what tense the verb is in and what kind of tense it is. And then what does it mean? Looking at this first, what does it mean? Okay, everyone think they got a decent translation? The Lord looses prisoners. Right, okay, great. Which tense is it? It's present tense. It's easy because it's the only one we've done so far. Right? So it's present tense, right? What type of present tense is it? Or what could it be? Okay, could be progressive, meaning he is loosing prisoners. He is you're seeing this process going on. What else could it be? Iterative, as in he repeatedly. Tell you what I'm going to suggest. Well, I'll give you a clue of what I think it could be. Is it mentioning any specific prisoners here? If it's generic, so gnomic. Could well be gnomic. Could well be saying this is a timeless truth that the Lord releases prisoners. Could be. Now check it out. Psalm 146 verse 7. The Lord releases the imprisoned. You could take that as it being gnomic. Now it's hard when we do this to say. It's not like we can say, aha, by looking at it, I can see it's a gnomic. It's more like you're like, okay, there's various different ways the present tense is used. This looks like it's a gnomic. In the context, it appears to be gnomic. But we've got to be careful about trying to imply we've got some Jedi thing going on in our mind, and we look at it and say, aha, this is gnomic. And someone else can be, no, it's iterative. And then you got some clash with your lightsabers of how you're trying to use the grammar. So we've got to be careful with the grammar. Okay, I'll give you another one. Ti luete ton polon. T means why, luo. Now this time I've given you it in the lexical form. Luo, to loose. If you notice, it doesn't say luo. What's it say instead? Yeah, luete. And then ton polon is the colt. Just out of interest, ton is a word for the. I want you to translate it, but the way you translate it, identify the main verb there. There's only one verb, it's nice and easy. Then you've got to identify what tense is it and what person is it. When you've done that, then look at the other words here, and then you should be able to come up with a decent translation. Okay, what have you got? Why are you untying the colt? Okay, so what tense is luo? So you're saying it's the second person, plural, present tense. Good, okay, good. And so the tense is present tense, and the person is second person plural, which in America, down south, you'd say y'all. Great, okay. So it's to more than one person this is addressed to. And I'll just show you the English translation. ESV translates it, Luke 19, verse 33. And as they were untying the colt, its owners said to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" So what kind of present tense do you think it is? Progressive. It appears to be progressive, which means it's describing a scene in progress. Okay, well done, guys, because, you know, your translation was pretty close to the ESV. That's a good translation. So well done. Okay, you ready for another one? Blepo de heteron nomon. Why did I say heteron and not heteron? That's right, you got a breathing mark. And because it's pointing that way, you know it's a huh. It's a rough breathing mark. If it was pointing that way, in other words, if it was a backward C, then you wouldn't pronounce it and it would just be heteron. But because it's facing the same way as the letter C does, it's heteron. What I want you to do with this one is give a literal word-for-word translation and then write it in a way that you think is better English. Now, when I use that word literal, I'm not using it in the correct way. If you've heard Bill Mounce's teachings, then you know that literal means the same meaning. We use it to mean word for word. And thank God we don't really have word for word translations because they would be incredibly hard to read. But we think we have word for word translations. And some of them are pretty close. But you'll see with this one, you do it word for word and then try translating it in a way with better English, which really would be a more literal meaning because literal means what it meant. So who's got a word for word translation for me? There you go. I see blepo. And notice there's no word I before it. In English you would say I see. You wouldn't just say see. You know, you have to say I see. In Greek, it's already there in the verb. A lot of information in this verb. So it says, I see, but another law. Now, this word but here is not at the beginning of the sentence. In Greek, you've got loads of words which are called post-positives, where the words that are saying like for or but, they're not at the beginning of the sentence. They put them the second word in. Seems strange to us English people. So you see, a word for word translation to English people is weird. I see, but another law. Someone give me a good English translation of it. But I see another law. Do you see why we don't really have word-for-word translations and why we don't really want them? Let's have a look at the English translation. Net Bible, Romans 7:23. But I see a different law in my members, waging war against the law of my mind. Okay. Now that word heteron means another. It also means different. You've probably heard before people say there's another Greek word that means another, which is allos. And the difference is allos often mean of the same kind, and heteros means of a different kind, hence the word heterosexual. Someone who likes someone of the different sex. A male likes a female. Hetero. That's where we get this. That's where we get the English word from the Greek word here, heteron. So, blepo, someone tell me first the person and number of it. First person singular, I. Okay, great. Now someone tell me the tense. Present tense. Okay, now for this whole section in Romans 7, and this is the tough one, what kind of present tense do you think it is? Okay, could be customary. You know, remember, this is a whole bit where Paul's saying about this struggle of I do the things that I don't want to do. It's hard, isn't it? I'm hearing people say progressive, customary. I haven't heard anyone say historical present. Some people say that this whole section in Romans 7 is historical present. That it's Paul referring to the past, but using the present tense to make it exciting. Now, there's a problem with that Wallace points out. Wallace says that it's unlikely because you don't see basically says it's unlikely because it's first person singular. You then got to look at the New Testament and see, do they use the historic present with first person singular? Normally you see it used with third person, like he goes to the town, he says to the people, and it's referring to the past, but they're using the present tense. Wallace says, well, if this is Paul talking about his past life before he met Christ, then it's unusual that he would use the present historic. But that is one popular view. There's another view that it could be gnomic. Present tense, it could be gnomic. It could be a timeless truth, and Paul is speaking as a universal man, saying this is a problem for all mankind. You could even say it is a problem for both Christians and non-Christians, the degenerate and the regenerate. It's hard, and basically one of the things why I want to point this out is to show that grammar and syntax won't always lead you to know for sure what a passage means. It can help, but there's times where you have to say, you know what, I can't tell for sure if this is a gnomic or if this is a present historic. And you could say, to me, it appears unlikely it's a present historic, might be more likely it's gnomic, but what you're going to have to do is do more study behind it. And there's other factors like Romans 8. Now, you're chatting about the Holy Spirit. So that's something you might want to use in your study to say, does that give me an idea of what Romans 7 means? And it's hard. And I think you'll find most people who've taught Romans 7, or it's anyone who's studied it in their life, has thought different things about it. So anyone with humility will approach it in that way. And I've never heard anyone categorically say, now this definitely means this. I think if you do that, you're setting yourself up. So grammar is helpful, but there's times where we've got to be humble and say, you know what, I've looked at the Greek and it's still hard to tell what this is. Okay, another present tense one. Gar, Qatar, Sarka, Zete. Give me a word-for-word translation first, then give me one in better English. Sarka is from the Greek word sarx. Sarx means flesh. So give me a word-for-word translation of this phrase here. Word for word. If for according to flesh, and then live, remember in Greek it's got the person included in the verb. So, well, which is it, I or you? You? Okay, so someone give it to me in better English. For if you live according to the flesh. Present tense. Now, let me show you it, where it's from. Romans 8:13. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. I didn't give you in the Greek the bit that says you will die, just to make it simple. But so the whole phrase here is saying, for if you live according to the flesh, you will die. Now it's present tense. Okay. So what kind of present is it? Okay. So we've got someone saying it's generic, is for which would make it what? Gnomic. Okay. There's a problem with that. A problem, you're not necessarily wrong, but there's a problem in the way you came to that conclusion. And I'm glad you did that because I was setting you guys up. It sounds gnomic because in English, if I said if you live according to the flesh, you will die, am I specifically speaking to you guys in the room? I heard right that if you want to get in the army, then you have to have an interview and then you've got to do psychometric tests. And am I saying you, Neil? Neil, if you want to get in the army, you have to... What am I saying when I say if you want to get in the army? Am I saying if all of you want to get in the army? Think. General talking, thank you. In English, when we say you, a lot of the time we don't mean you at all. We mean one. If one wants to get into the army, then you need to arrange an interview. Okay, but we don't like saying that because it sounds a bit posh. So instead we say, if you want to get in the army, then I heard that what you got to do, right, is, and I'm not saying you specifically, I'm just saying people in general. Now we do that in English all the time. You'll notice it now when you're chatting to people. You hear people say you all the time, and they don't mean you. They just mean people in general. All right? So this is how it works in English. It doesn't appear to work the same way in Greek. Okay, in Greek, when it says you, it means you. Okay, it doesn't mean one. Okay, if it wanted to mean one, it would use the third person singular. Okay, or it could use the third person plural. So in Greek, when you see a you, you need to recognize this is actually addressed to a specific you. Okay, so In this case, who is Paul addressing? This is Romans, right? So who's he addressing? The Roman church, the church in Rome, okay? So it appears to be a warning to the Christians in Rome. He's not saying, hey, do you know what? If one lives according to the flesh, one dies. He's actually saying, if you live according to the flesh, you'll die. You see how the Romans are going to read this a bit differently to the way we oftentimes read it. It would be a bit frightening. This is actually addressed to you. Oi, you lot. If you live according to the flesh, you're about to die. Oh, they didn't have the English language mindset. Like, someone else. I'm just sitting here nice and cozy whilst this is being read out in church. You can imagine if they had recliners then, people would suddenly be like, rewind that. Like, I need to hear that bit again. So they would have seen it as a direct warning to them. So I'm going to ask you again, what kind of present tense do you think it could be? I'm stressing that, do you think it could be? Iterative. It could be iterative. If it's iterative, then how would you, stylistically in English, how could you say that? If you repeatedly live by the flesh, you will die. Okay, now what could another one be? If it was stative, then what would that be? Yeah, customary. And if it's stative, then it's saying, yeah. So if you continually live by the flesh, you will die. Now, we can't say for sure which it is, but we can explore it and be like, And then you want to use your other Bible study techniques to look at this and say, is this talking about spiritual death or is it talking about physical death? Like I'm teaching tomorrow on communion. There were dudes that died because of the way they were taking communion. You think, that's a bit shocking. That's a small thing to die over, innit? Well, you can die if you try and grab hold of the ark and hold it up. And you can die if you burn strange fire in the tabernacle. There's a lot of things people have died for, small things. To us, seem small things. To God aren't small things. There have been believers that God has taken out, and you look at it in Scripture, it's actually a good thing they've been taken out. God knows what he's doing. So anyway, that's a whole nother Bible study there. But I just think this is very important for you to know that when it says you, it means you. So let's look at this next one. Pothen un eches to hudor to zone. So let's hear it. It sounds good. Where then you have this living water. Okay. And that's a question mark at the end in Greek. It's confusing because in English that isn't a question mark, but it is in Greek. And the word pothen tells you it's a question anyway. So in Greek, if it's a question, when you're translating it, you're able to put the word do in there, just like we do in English. So now translate it with good English style. Okay, check it out. This is interesting, right? The NIV translates it, John 4:11, with the Samaritan woman. She says, where can you get this living water? Okay, now check out your translations at home. This is the same kind of translation that pretty much everyone gives it. And they've basically got the woman saying, where do you get this living water? Now, looking at the NIV, how is you used there? Is it used in the Greek sense or in the English sense, where we do it as an indefinite person? Is she saying, Jesus, where do you get this living water? Is that the way we often read it? It doesn't sound like
Nah.
Exactly. It sounds like it's talking about an indefinite person. It sounds like when we read it in English, you look at pretty much any translation, it sounds like it's saying, so where does one get this water? Where'd you get it then? Like I could say to someone, where'd you get season tickets from? I could be chatting to someone I know doesn't buy season tickets for a game, but I'm just saying, where does one get season tickets? It looks like that, but you've just translated it in the Greek a different way. You've translated it, where do you keep it? Or where have you got it? Because she's saying you to Jesus. It's to Jesus. She's saying, Jesus, she don't know who he is, hasn't quite got it, but she's like, where do you have this water? Where have you got it stowed away? And the meaning, if you're doing a sort of dynamic equivalence translation, which is what everyone, it seems, has done, then it is saying, where can you get this living water in English? But if you really want to look at a word-for-word translation, it appears she's saying, where do you have this water? Obviously because she's thinking it'd be good to get some, but she's actually asking, where do you have it? So this is just a good example of how Greek works as opposed to how English works. So to sum up, one of these points I'm trying to get you to see here is, you must remember this. You does not mean one in Koine Greek. When you see you, it does not mean one in Koine Greek. In English, the second person and the third person are blurred. 1 minute we say one, the next minute we say you. So we blur them together. But when you're reading your Bibles, recognize that in Greek, these aren't blurred. Now, this is going to revolutionize your Bible study now. When you see the word you, you're going to be thinking, hang on a minute, this isn't talking about an indefinite person. This is addressed to someone. In Greek, the second person and the third person are not blurred. Doesn't appear to be anyway. We've still got a lot more work to do on understanding Koine Greek grammar. But it appears at the moment that they're not blurred in Greek. Maybe in 10 years' time, someone will do some research and be like, actually, sometimes they are. But it appears at the moment that they're not. Now, why is this important? This is very significant in verses concerning salvation. And we're going to see that now. This is very interesting. I doubt you would have noticed these things before. There's verses where people think it indicates that you can lose your salvation. Question is, are those verses addressed to you or to he, she, or it, or one? Okay, our best way, we just dive in there. Hebrews 6, verses 4 to 9. You all know this one. For in the case of those who have once been enlightened, now it says those, what person is that? Third person, plural, okay. It is impossible to renew them again to repentance, since they again crucified to themselves the Son of God. The whole way, this is third person plural, right? Now watch the shift. But beloved, we are concerned of better things concerning you and things that accompany salvation. Did you see the shift? Okay, it shifted from third person plural to what? Second person plural. You can't see it looking at the English, but it's second person plural. Who's Hebrews written to? The Hebrews, right, okay. So he's talking to these Hebrew Christians. He's letting them know this. We're thinking of better things concerning you. Interesting. So he's saying, in the case of those who have once been enlightened, it's impossible to renew them again. Now you read the verse and you think, could I lose my salvation? Is this for me? And then he says, but for you lot. And he says, we're convinced of better things. Paul is not in any way trying to get the Hebrew recipients of this letter to think like, he's saying, you lot, we're convinced of better things for you. He's confident of their salvation. But these other people, it's an abstract thing. This is very interesting. A lot of these verses you find in the Bible, it appears that when it's talking about people losing their salvation, it's other people, third person. When it's talking about, you got your salvation, it's second person, and it's not a generic thing. It's like, yes, you can be confident of your salvation. I'm confident. The Apostle Paul is saying, I'm convinced of better things for you. You guys aren't gonna do what these other guys have done.
Could he mean when he said like
could be people who've been coming to church who aren't Christians, get all hyped up, excited. You think they're going to become Christians. They're rolling with the Christians. They're like, yeah, this is great. And then they're like, nah, I decided not to do that. It might not even mean people who become Christians. It might mean people who are chilling with the church. And but that's outside the scope of what we're looking at here. Well, the message is like, yeah, there's these other people, but you guys are following God. So it appears the Bible doesn't want to leave you hanging thinking, is my salvation in jeopardy? But it affirms your salvation. And then when it refers to losing your faith, it's other people. If you want to look up John 15 in your own time and check it about you abiding in the vine. And then it goes to third person when it's talking about people that can be chopped off. Yeah. The disciples are in the vine. He's not making Peter and John think, oh, I'm going to get chopped off. It switches to third person. You can have a lot of fun looking at this. But just to equip you a bit better, because there's one verse which people look at and they think it's talking about you losing your salvation. And people might quote it to you and say, yeah, but what about this? It's Romans 11:22. Notice, therefore, the kindness and harshness of God. Kindness towards you, provided you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. This appears to contradict what I just said. Because now it's addressed to you and you're thinking, oh my goodness. But here now he's saying to you, and it's saying we'll be cut off. So this is a message from me from Paul to me saying I will get cut off. Now, we got to be really careful here, okay? If you look it up in the Greek, you will see that when it says you, it's not second person plural. It's second person singular. This is addressed to one person or one thing, okay? Now, this is important because when Paul writes Romans, who's he writing to? The Romans. He's writing to the church in Rome. All the way through Romans, you see him using you in the plural sense. So he's talking to the church. Yeah, we saw that a minute ago. If you live according to the flesh, you will die. Okay, so he's talking to you plural. And here we see he's talking you singular. So we ask ourselves a question. When did he start talking you singular as opposed to you plural? And we go through the Greek text. And what we find is that it started at verse 17. Now, if some of the branches were broken off and you, a wild olive shoot, were grafted in among them, here where it says you, it switches to singular. Okay? And then it says a wild olive shoot. So who is Paul now talking to for the time that he says you in the singular sense? Now, you feel wacky saying it, but who's he talking to? He's talking to a wild olive shoot. No, it sounds crazy, but he's gone from talking to the congregation, you plural, and he's now switches into this interesting mode where he's chatting to the wild olive shoot. Okay? Now, I don't mean that Paul is stupid. I don't mean that Paul's really chatting to a piece of nature, but the wild olive shoot is symbolizing something else, and that is who Paul's talking to. Now, this is a relief because the wild olive shoot we know is the Gentiles. What a relief. Because now we see that when he says in verse 22, you continue in his kindness, otherwise you also will be cut off. Now we know he's not talking to me. He's not like, if he was in the room, he's not saying, oi, you lot, you're going to be cut off. You're going to lose your salvation. He's talking about the Gentiles, the favor that the Gentiles are receiving, the favor that the Gentiles are receiving today, that the Jewish people aren't receiving right now. But he's saying, hey, you Gentiles, don't start getting cocky, looking down on the Jews like churches always do. Terrible sin. Don't start doing that because you Gentiles could be cut off. And we know there is going to be a day where the time of the Gentiles is done. So this isn't a verse that's written to make you personally worried about your salvation. This is a verse to make you consider that the Gentiles have got their time right now, but God can stop that time. So you see how looking at the person and number is very significant, especially in verses to do with salvation. The Bible doesn't want you to go around worried that you're going to lose your salvation tomorrow. The Bible does want you to persevere in your faith, That is very clear. But he doesn't want you to go around worried that, boy, maybe I just lost my salvation 5 minutes ago because I didn't pray or whatever. I didn't take my Bible to church this Sunday. Maybe I just lost my salvation. Okay. You then want to ask yourself, when does it switch back into the plural? And it happens in verse 25. He says, "For I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers and sisters, so that you may not be conceited." He's gone back to now. He's not addressing the wild olive shoot. He's now addressing the congregation again. Okay, and you can see this in the Greek, and you can see it in Esau when you're looking for the tense. You know, it's got all those funny letters and numbers. It will then have some numbers, and it will say 1. If it says 1, what do you think it means? And then it will have an S next to it. What do you think that means? If it has a P, what's it mean? Plural. There you go. Nice and easy. We don't even need to look at it in Esau. It's so easy. So, you know, this is a great tool to understand the Bible better, to look at the person and number.